Vandy fought hard, fell short on the scoreboard, but in the process earned a ton of respect.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. Well, Vandy went toe-to-toe with the Longhorns. They came close to pulling the upset, but in the process, they got everybody's attention, man. But Texas overwhelmed with speed. Vandy adjusted great in the second half, but it wasn't enough. And Diego Pavia is a warrior as they try to mount a comeback. But, man, this team showed you everything that they needed to show. I mean, they hung in there with Texas. They took Texas's best shot. I mean, Texas is a super talented team. We knew that coming in. The hope was that, Vandy's offense was going to confuse them a little bit. They were still a little funky about the quarterback situation, which was actually true. Georgia kind of did that to them, but I mean, we all know what Georgia brings to the table, but that was something that, Vandy was leaning on, and Vandy was still going to have to play a near perfect game to be able to pull this upset. And they just came in and Texas just overwhelmed you. And that's what they do well. So I got to tip my cap to Texas. They played a great game. They had a great game plan. They played to their identity, and they showed that they can come in the road in a tough situation, because Texas was in a tough situation here. They're just coming off a massive loss. They've got what everyone believes to be some quarterback issues, whether they actually had them or not. There was the belief that there are, which any bit of doubt that creeps into your head can get in there and spiral out of control and really make the vibes around your program weird and really kind of just shake things up a little bit. But and the game looked like it was getting off to that kind of start. Vandy on the first possession gets an interception, goes up 7-0, and we're like, okay, here we go. Like, what now? Quinn Ewers throws a pick on a tip pass. He doesn't look comfortable. And Vandy goes down there and scores, and you're thinking, okay, this is something, let's buckle up. Let's see what's going to happen. And then Texas just started clicking after that. And Quinn Ewers had 3 touchdown passes, I think 200 yards in the first half after that interception. And they looked fantastic. Defense struggled keeping up with Texas. It felt like receivers were wide open everywhere. It felt like running backs had plenty of room to run. They were gashing Vandy on big plays, big chunk plays, 20 yards at a time, moving the ball down. Some near perfect throws. There was I think their first touchdown was well defended by Russell, but the Texas receiver just went up and got it, and Ewers put the ball in a place where only his guy could get it and come down with it, and they made that happen. There was the second one was a great play call where they sent 2 guys in and wheeled the third guy, and I think it might have been the running back. I can't remember exactly who it was, but they wheeled a third guy up the sideline, and he was just wide open. So it was a great play call. Took advantage of what Vandy's defense was trying to do. They were on their heels a little bit, and then they were just reeling. And then Pavia, he throws 2 interceptions. Cedric Alexander fumbles one right there before half. So you give the ball away 3 times, and the momentum just kind of stayed with Texas that whole time. The second half, defense played phenomenal. I think they made some really good adjustments, but just in the end, they overwhelmed. But Pavia, I want to talk about him for a second, because he goes in the injury tent. And you're thinking, okay, here we go. And now it's going to be the Nate Johnson show from here on out. Let's see what the kid can do, which I think in his few reps he did okay. But Pavia came out the next series, was an absolute warrior, man. I mean, he didn't have the same burst and the same speed that he normally has, but I mean, he was making the same off-platform throws. He was dialed in, especially in the second half. I mean, he really fought back, and he really earned a lot of respect. So, but the story of the game, of course, is speed, though. That's where Texas lies. It's speed, speed, speed. And the team that was going to win, if we go back to the keys to the game, the team that was going to win, it was the team that was going to control the tempo. And I think Texas dictated that a lot. I think Texas prevented Vandy from getting the chunk yardage that they could. They held them, I think, to 3 and 13 on third downs. And they held the ball, and Texas actually held the ball longer than Vandy. They forced a couple turnovers. They got Vandy in a couple 3-and-outs, and they just really kind of knocked Vandy back off their heels a little bit. And Vandy was trying to figure out what to do. It just seemed like there's one picture, and I need to find it again, but there's one picture that I saw out there where there's a Vandy ball carrier and 3 mammoth defensive linemen surrounding him, and it looked like he was in a forest of redwoods, and that told the story of the game. I mean, Texas they're just far and away better than what Vandy is. And that's not a knock on Vandy. Texas showed why people were thinking they were the number 1 team in the country. Georgia showed why they think they should be number 1 in the country. I think that was a good game between 2 good teams in Austin 2 weeks ago, or the week before last. And then this past game was Texas coming in and saying, okay, well, we're not going to let Georgia beat us twice. We're going to come in, and they took Vandy's best shot, and they held on, which is admirable. But anytime, and I know Texas fans are probably walking away from this going, we should have blown them out. It was a 3 touchdown. It was a 3 touchdown spread. So we should have won by that much. Like we were cruising, and then they're going to say they fell asleep at the wheel, which is not true. I think Vandy was able to get pressure on Ewers. Capers had a really nice game. Langston Patterson threw his hand up, tipped one up for an interception there in the second half. I think Texas was I think that was the drive. Texas was going to start opening things up a little bit and creating even more separation on the scoreboard. And Langston Patterson was able to stick his paw up there. But the story is that when plays needed to be made, Diego Pavia made them. And I think that was something that you can look at and say, okay, well, this Vandy team is for real. And that's why they earned the respect in the process. And Clark Lee and this team doesn't want moral victories. We know that. They know that. And that's good to hear. Like they're not feeling good about this because they, in their mind, thought they should have and could have won, or could have and should have won, because they thought they played well enough to beat Texas. And they did, just not over the course of 4 quarters. And they didn't put together enough to really go out there and seize that momentum that they needed. It was probably one of those things where it's too little too late. And so I'm very proud of this group, though. I'm very, very proud of how they played, how they fought, how they hung in there, how they took the onslaught of that's what Texas does. They overwhelm you. They blitzkrieg you. That's just kind of what they do. They just, like an avalanche, right? They overwhelm you with speed, and they overwhelm you with speed on both sides. I mean, those defensive linemen, boom, those running lanes closed just like that. The pass rush was all over Pavia. He couldn't get comfortable. He's not really much of a pocket passer anyway. He's not comfortable in the pocket anyway, but the speed, man, speed kills. That's an old saying. That's an idiom, I guess. Well, not an idiom, but that's an old saying. Speed kills, right? And Texas does that. And Texas is very good at that, offensively and defensively, and in special teams. Like they had some good returns in special teams as well. That kind of prevented Vandy from creating long fields. So, I was impressed with Texas and how they kind of bounced back. I was impressed with Texas and how they handled the environment, because everything was against them. I admire Texas for the way they played, the speed in which they played with. I think Ewers really showed that, hey, this is not actually a quarterback controversy. I thought he did a good job of squashing that whole notion, because that was one of the big stories coming into the game. That was one of the things that people were talking about. I don't know if it was a big story in the media, but a lot of people were talking about it in conversations that I had. Was like, hey, what's going on with the quarterback situation at Texas? Like, if they're trying to shoehorn Arch Manning in there. They're trying to get him to play quarterback at the University of Texas. They want him. It's almost like they wanted Ewers to fail. It's almost like they wanted to find a reason any reason, a slight reason to put him in. And that's where everybody was kind of like, uh-oh, he threw a pick in the first series. What's going to happen? And what happened was he responded with 200 yards and 3 touchdowns in the first half, and responded even better towards the end of the game. I think it's just one of those things where you just have to say, hey, you have to tip your cap to Texas and say, no, they're ranked top 5 for a reason. They were considered the best team in the country at one point for a reason, and that's why. They overwhelm you with speed. But, man, Diego Pavia is a warrior. He is an absolute warrior. He, again, just proved, like, that's leadership right there. I mean, honestly, that's leadership. You go into the tent, you come back out, and you're like, nah, screw this injury. I'm playing. Let's roll, okay? That's a leader. That is leadership in a nutshell. So Diego Pavia, phenomenal job on that, and just absolutely leading and showing people, hey, this is what we need to do. This is the kind of commitment we need to this team. This is kind of the commitment we need to this effort. If we're going to win, if we're going to go to a bowl game, if we're going to have the season that we want and beyond, we have to establish this culture. Fight, 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 fight. You're not always going to win on the scoreboard, but you continue to fight and you will start winning games that you shouldn't more frequently. And so that's another one that I think is good. So, but man, I gotta give it to the defense, and I'll tell you why. I've tipped my cap to the defense. I'll tell you why next. Hey, NFL fans, and college football fans too, get ready to tackle NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, welcome back. Second segment, Locked On Vandy. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen. Thank you to you everydayers for making this your everyday listen. If you need a second listen, just check out Locked On SEC and see what Chris Gordy has to offer. The SEC squad, I got to throw a plug in for that. That's a phenomenal show. You're missing out. If you're missing out, you're missing out. If you know, you know. All right. So we talked about Texas's speed, right? We talked about how they overwhelm Vandy, how they overwhelm really anybody, but this past weekend, how they overwhelmed Vandy with a bunch of speed. And that eventually takes its toll on you. That puts psychologically, that puts pressure on you as well. You know, you feel like you have to account for it. You feel like people are flying at you from all directions, and you get real discombobulated when a team has superior team speed like that, and they just overwhelm you and avalanche you with that. So, but I thought the defense, they took a bunch of haymakers, right? And especially in the first half, the Texas had their run game going, which I was thinking at some point, if Texas ever throws another pass, this is stupid if they ever throw another pass. They are gashing Vandy on every run, and they should just run the ball the whole time because they're not stopping it whatsoever. And Vandy's defense just looked confused. They were on their heels, wasn't sure what to do, and they couldn't react. They couldn't tackle in space. There's so many plays where they had a guy for a short loss, no gain, or even just a really short gain. All they have to do is tackle in space. Especially in the first half, I don't think they did a great job of tackling in space, which allowed not Vandy, but Texas allowed their guys to get extra yards. Like they turned a no gain into a first down on several occasions just by flipping the ball out to the flat. Guy makes one guy miss, and there's nobody else to be found. So, I thought Texas did a good job of scheming themselves into that situation, which I'll give them credit for that. But Vandy has got, when they get there, they've got to tackle. They've got to tackle. Defense, I thought, put them in some tough spots, and they made them pay that way. But the defense in the first half was just taking haymaker after haymaker after haymaker. And those 3 touchdowns were beautiful plays, just shot plays, well designed, well executed shot plays. And the DBs a lot of times, were in good phase, but just got beat on the route. It was Dante Carter got beat on a route. Just chalk it up to him being a freshman, man. That's going to happen occasionally. As a freshman, when you're young and you're inexperienced and things are coming at you fast, that's going to happen. So I don't really fault him for that. But I think Texas just did a good job of finding those matchups and exploiting those. And that's the old ad. When you're an offensive coordinator, hey, where's the freshman? That's immediately, okay, let's go pick on the freshman. Let's go see if he's going to make a play. And in this case, I thought Dante, I think Carter has played well, but as a freshman, you're going to make those mistakes. So I don't hold that against him really. But that first half was just, it's just Texas proving why Texas is Texas and why they're ranked where they're ranked, because they're such an explosive team. They overwhelm you. And, offensively, they didn't have their best receiver, Isaiah Bond. Like, just think if they had him. Just think of what would have happened there. But they were moving up and down the field. They were finding open lanes with relative ease. Ewers had a good bit of time most plays to throw it, and sometimes when they get pressure, sometimes when Vandy get pressure, he would slip out of it and find himself into some good situations. So, it's just one of those things where you just have to take that onslaught and you have to take those haymakers and you have to say, okay, how are we going to adjust? What are we going to do? How do we account for the speed? They're scheming us well. They've got us in, they've got us reacting how they want. They are in control of this game. How do we do it? And some of those plays, there wasn't much pressure and they were dropping 8. They weren't, and they had to manufacture pressure. And I give it to Clark Lee. I'm gonna give some credit to Clark Lee. I know there's some people out there that don't think he should deserve any credit, but he adjusted well in the second half. I thought he did a better job of getting pressure on Quinn Ewers, forcing him to throw. I thought they did a better job on first down, not getting gashed for 6, 7, 8 yards on first down, setting up manageable situations on the second and third down. I thought they did a good job of getting to Ewers, with I think they had 4 sacks in the second half, and they just harassed him. They made him uncomfortable. There were several drives where Texas was starting to enter the scoring zone, and they take a big sack on third down and have to punt. And I think that's the reason why Vandy's field position was terrible all night long, because their defense, was bend but not break, and they got to that certain point, and Texas was able to pin them deep on several occasions and forcing Vandy to move down the field. And Texas, again, with their speed, they're just a hard defense to move the ball on because they're fast, right? And you learn that speed can make up for a lot of things, but I thought the defense adjusted well. I thought they started to figure out what Texas wanted to do, and they started taking it away to the best of their ability. Now, they weren't successful all the time taking away, but you could tell they knew they needed to take it away, but superior athletes just made plays. There were several situations where their tight end was wide open in some certain scenarios. They knew they needed to get him, but he just gets lost in there, or like they're well defended and he makes a catch, or Ewers gets the ball out quick. And there's things that Vandy, I think, did and wanted to do, but they just couldn't. But I think they made a lot of good adjustments. I thought they figured out what they wanted to do. I thought they figured out, hey, we need to manufacture some pressure. We're not going to be able to get it with just the front four, so we've got to bring some heat if we're going to win this game. Otherwise, Ewers is just going to sit back there. He's going to have a 500-yard game with 7 touchdowns, and this game's going to be, 48-7, just like that, right? And so it's just one of those things where, they knew their backs were against the wall. They knew they had to do something. If they didn't change course very much, it was going to be 48-7. So why not change course, bring more pressure, be more aggressive, get out of zone more and lock down? And why not come after Ewers? Why not force him to beat us with a quick game? Why not force the ball out of his hands quicker and why not force Sark to call run game and quick game, and so the defense can kind of dictate the play calling a little bit. And I thought they did that to a certain degree, but it just wasn't quite enough in the end. But I think that it's just, again, and they did a good job of creating turnovers. They created, I think it was 3-3 in the turnover battle, if I remember correctly. Let me look that up. But they did a good job in the second half of getting to them. And they did a good job in the second half of creating some havoc and trying to create some momentum for Vandy in that second half to allow them to come back. And they allowed them, and they gave them chances to come back, and they gave them chances to stay in the game, and Vandy obliged. And so the turnovers were 3-2, so they were able to take it away twice on 2 interceptions. Tip balls, interceptions, and Vandy's had points off of both of those, so that was good. That pass to that pass through traffic on that touchdown to Skinner was absolutely outstanding, and that was Junior Sherrill, but yeah, that was outstanding, and I was impressed with the way they did some things, but again, it just great play calling. Sark is a good coach. He adjusts well. Clark Lee adjusts well. And I think there's something to that. So what's the lessons going forward? Well, we're going to end the show with those lessons, and we'll talk about that next. GameTime has a new feature called GameTime Picks. That's right. They make getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. GameTime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Right. So when you're thinking about going to that World Series game at Yankee Stadium, you should get on GameTime and see what deals there are, and make sure you don't get an obstructive view seat, by the way. But GameTime Picks makes curation even easier to save on sports, comedy, concerts, theater, or whatever you're going to. All-in pricing, if you toggle this feature, it shows you the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Seat views, get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. So if you're going to a Yankees game, you can know right away if you're getting an obstructed view seat, and you can say, nope, don't want that seat. And that's outstanding. I think they still have a deal where if you pick the section, GameTime will pick the seat. So that's actually pretty cool too. They have the lowest price guarantee, or GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference. GameTime ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime Picks. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it? Game time. All right, man, we're wrapping up the show here. Vandy falls short. They earned a lot of respect. In Texas, you got to pat them on the back, man. That job well done there. And they adjusted. They got to they had the onslaught, but they survived that. So give them credit too. So, but this game comes with lessons, right? And the first lesson is no moral victories, and that's good for the mindset. Like old Vandy teams would have been ecstatic that they only lost by 3 points to Texas, who is 3 touchdown favorites, right? They would have been ecstatic. They would have been, they'd have been jovial, happy. You'd have been like, yeah, man, we played so great, and and they can still say that, but this team is like, nah, guys, we should have won that game. Like this is not where we want to be. This is not who we are. We can win these type of games. And so that's where this team is, and that's where their mindset is. And that's exactly where you want them to be. You want them to feel like, if you're like, I guarantee you last year's team would have been ecstatic with this loss. Like, we didn't lose by double touchdowns. We covered the spread. Yay. Right. This team is not. And you got to love that about this mindset. And it makes them even hungrier And it makes this team, that's what makes this team fun to watch, because they're gritty, they're hungry, they play well together, they adjust well, they're very resilient. And these are qualities that you want in a team. And the bowl, they're sitting at 5-3, and the bowl game is right there, well within reach. You've got Auburn this week, South Carolina, then a bye, then LSU, then Tennessee, which the last 2 games are going to be tough. LSU's really good right now, even though they took a tough loss at A&M. But this is going to be one of those lessons where this resiliency is going to come into play. Like Diego Pavia going into the tent and coming back out, that warrior mentality, it's funneled through the entire team, because Texas had a chance to really bury them. They were up, I think it was 21-7. They're up. They go up 24-7. They're right there, ready to pounce. I mean, they're right. It's right there for the taking, and Texas probably should have blown this game wide open, and they didn't, because Vandy is resilient. Vandy's tough, and Texas wasn't. Texas took that counterpunch. They weren't quite ready for it. Knocked them back on their heels a little bit. Allowed Vandy back into it, but in the end, Texas walks away with the win, and they're beat up. So mindset wise, that's the thing to take away. You love Vandy's mindset. Didn't win. Not saying we're satisfied with that. Not saying we're happy with a near loss. But I think in the grand scheme of things, when you're trying to get this train moving and when you're trying to get some momentum building, these respect type games do have an impact on that. They do keep things moving forward. They do keep the mindset of, hey, we know. Like deep down in all that disappointment is confidence. Like, we know we can hang with them. We know we can take their best shot, and we can deliver our best shot. And our best shot is good enough to win. It wasn't because of some circumstances earlier in the game, and their best shot came a little too late, but they know that their best shot is good enough. They know it. This team knows that their best shot is good enough, and they're going to give it to Auburn. They're going to give it to South Carolina. They're going to give it to LSU. They're going to give it to Tennessee, and let the chips fall where they may, because those teams also recruit. Those teams also have NIL players. Those teams also play in the SEC. So guess what? They are good too. So fight versus fight, and you just got to see who kind of comes out in the end. But this is a team that's fun to watch. This is a team that has really, really powerful leaders, really influential leaders, especially at the quarterback position. Defensively, Patterson made a huge impact when he came in. You saw the defense played a lot better, a lot cleaner, they were in position better. They just got tackled better. So what are some other things we can learn? Okay, tackling in space. You learn how important it is. You just got to keep improving in that, right? If Vandy can tackle in space better, because teams are going to start, that's football now. Vandy does it to people. That's football. You try to get guys into space. You try to create the space and put the ball into playmakers' hands in space and force the other team to tackle. That's the number one. That's the number one goal for every play. It's no longer three yards in a cloud of dust for 95% of football plays. It's trying to get somebody out in space and forcing the defense to tackle. So the defense has to do a better job of tackling. Georgia's defense tackled very well in space. That's why Texas couldn't move the ball. Vandy, first half, tackled very poorly in space. Second half, tackled better. You saw what happened. You saw the difference in the halves, right? So they've got to do better at tackling in space. I think offensively, they've got to have some answers for when they take away the option, because it worked in some cases, but again, their speed allows them to recover a lot, and they can cover some ground and really make up for when they do get confused and they do got on the option, that they can recover and still make the play. Vandy's got to have answers for that. And I love the fourth down call. Got called back and they had to punt, but I love the fourth down call of the hey, we didn't get the call, and Stowers runs in there and takes the snap. Well, they saw him kind of mosey, and they pinched the A gaps, and they were ready for the Stowers sneak, and they would have stuffed it. But instead, he turns and hands a jet sweep, and they get the first down and more, but got called back. And so, that's the kind of creativity that you want, that you expect for this team to have if they're going to be successful. So creativity is going to give them opportunities to have things when their base things aren't there, right? The receivers have to find ways to get into space. They have to find ways to get themselves open or open enough. Diego Pavia's got to understand what SEC open is versus what Conference USA open is, right? And he's got to understand that he can help them get open by throwing them into space, and he's got to develop as a passer. So he's got to develop as a passer so that they do have things to answer when the option isn't quite running. And if he can answer with those things, then the option will actually open back up. So they've got to have things off of things, and they've got to be prepared to, when a team stops their primary thing, what's next, right? And I don't think they had enough of those answers. And I think if they had enough of those answers, they would have won. And if they had enough of those answers, they had Texas right where they wanted it. They had chances, but that's something they need to work on, whether it's finding a receiver that's going to emerge as a dog, or concepts, or Pavia being, better and more accurate as a passer. All of those things probably combined will create a better passing game. Special teams, Brock Taylor was, I think, he was 1 for 1 on his field goals, and they scored touchdowns the rest of the way. But punting, I think, is punt coverage has got to be a little bit better. I think they had some decent punts, but again, they didn't have a whole lot of hang time, and the coverage team just wasn't able to prevent big yardage on some occasions. So special teams, they've got to get better in that regard. So those are some things that we learned. But overall, great fight. Overall, lots to be happy about, lots to be disappointed in, all in the same token, and lots to gain from this, and lots of hope to gain from this as well. So a lot of respect in the process, a lot of fight, and that'll take you a long way as a program if you continue those things and don't give up. So that's what we learned from this game, and we learned also that Texas's speed can and will overwhelm you, and we learned that that Quinn Ewers is not ready for there to be a quarterback controversy, and he's ready to end all of that, and he may have, for all intents and purposes, did in that. So that's all I got for you today. Vandy comes in as 6.5-point underdogs on the road at Auburn. We'll get into Auburn the rest of this week. We'll have a crossover with Zach Blackerby on the horizon as well. So that'll be a lot of fun. But until then, we'll see you back here next time on the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. Anchor down, behave yourselves. Peace.